Good evening, Spring Hill. On a chilly night, I'm Victor Lay, the City Administrator with the city here in Spring Hill, and I want to introduce to you Chuck Downham, our Assistant City Administrator. This is the fourth meeting that we've had on Buckner Lane, the widening of Buckner Lane, and we've got some great information to share with you tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Chuck. He will be the city's moderator through this meeting, and we'll introduce the consultant team. And then if there are questions at the end, we'll help to answer those questions. So Chuck.
Thank you, Victor. And again, for those in the audience, my name is Chuck Downham. I'm the Assistant City Administrator for the city. I'm also the senior point of contact on the project with the consultant team and local officials. As with a lot of our public meetings, I want to give the audience just a real brief snapshot of where we are with some of the other Buckner projects. We've recently gone through a plan review and approval process for the Buckner realignment project, which basically goes from Buckner and Buckner intersection north to Thompson Station Road. That project has received preliminary approval from the Planning Commission. They are now moving forward with finalizing engineering plans for that segment of the road project. Also to the west of the Buckner intersection, we've got what's referred to as the Buckner Road Transition Project. We've retained a company called Cordino Group, and they are proceeding with design. They've just recently finished up preliminary design. They're now moving forward with remaining design services to finish out the design work on that project. So it's progressing very well on schedule. We also get a lot of questions about the interchange project. If you recall from some of our previous public meetings, the city is working cooperatively with the Tennessee Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration. Tennessee Department of Transportation is delivering the project using a design build process. The design build process basically yielded 4 different design build proposers for the interchange project. From those 4 proposers, we have just recently received this past week the formal proposals from each of the different proposers. We're going to be reviewing those with the Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration as we make our way toward making a contract selection in early January. So the project is progressing very well, still on schedule, and we hope to launch that project in the very near term. We get a lot of questions from folks on which end they're going to start with or how the project's going to be executed. A lot of that will be worked out through the details and the contract negotiations that we'll have with the selected design build contractor. And we'll certainly be sharing more information and updates with the public as those projects progress. But anyway, wanted to give everybody a quick snapshot of how some of the other projects in the area are progressing. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to begin the conversation with affected property owners regarding right-of-way and easement acquisition that's going to be required for the widening project. We have with us tonight Lee Schumann, who's the Senior Project Manager and Senior Engineer for Kinley Horn, who's assembled a team of right-of-way experts that we have significant familiarity with. We've actually worked closely with them on some other road projects. And so he brings a very solid team of people together. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to share information about the right-of-way acquisition process and all of the different individuals that will be involved in that process as we move forward contacting individual property owners. So without further ado, I'll introduce Lee Schumann and let Lee introduce his team, and then he'll get into the presentation this evening. But again, thank you very much for your attendance tonight. Lee?
Thanks, Chuck. As Chuck said, I'm Lee Schumann, the project manager with Kinley Horn Associates. We can do some quick intros with the rest of the team if they'll come online here. We've got Drake Danley, also with Kinley Horn, and David Corley with Kinley Horn, both on my team and helping out quite a bit on this project. We have Randy Button and Adam Hill, who will serve as appraisers for this project. Ted Boozer, who will be the review appraiser. And we also have Deborah and Ralph Raymond, who are the negotiators. And behind the scenes, who you can't see, is Kevin Tilbury, who will be our moderator. So you'll hear him speak up. He's kind of keeping everything moving from behind the scenes, but we appreciate that, Kevin. So we can get started now that we've got some intros. At the end of this presentation, we'll have a chance for a Q&A. You can talk to each of our right-of-way team members, and it'd be nice to have expert Q&A here. So I'm going to share my screen, cut my video. All right, hopefully you can see that. So as Victor and Chuck mentioned, we're at the Buckner Lane Widening Project. This is a right-of-way acquisition process review meeting. So tonight, obviously we'll talk a little bit about the project location, but the main reason for this meeting is to go over the right-of-way acquisition process, to give you a look at some right-of-way exhibits that we'll be using, or that you can see, that you'll be able to download, to give you an idea of the project and the impacts associated with it, go over the schedule, and then have some Q&A. Please remember that there is a Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, as you can see in this slide. At any point during the presentation, punch it, put in your question. No one else will be able to see it. It will go straight to Kevin. He will then at the end of the meeting compile those and we'll answer those as we go. So please, I mean, this is what we're here for. Unfortunately, we can't do this in person. We have to do this virtually. So we want you to get as much out of this meeting as you can. So please don't be shy. So project location. The project itself, Buckner Lane, it falls east of Highway 31 and west I-65. The extent of this entire project is from Duplex Road to Buckner Road. The project itself, though, is broken into two phases. There's the north segment, which is phase 1, you'll see in blue. There's the south segment, which is phase 2, which you'll see in orange. And we're also showing here a couple of the things that Chuck had mentioned. In green, dotted, there's the future I-65 interchange and Buckner Road extension to the east. In red, you'll see just the line detailing where Buckner Lane will be extended to Thompson Station Road in the future. And then that small purple line is the transition project to bring all of these projects together within the Buckner intersection and tie Buckner Road in. But tonight, we're only going to be talking about the north segment. We want to focus on this and the right-of-way acquisition process for this area. So the acquisition process is an important part of any project. It's obviously extremely important for you as a property owner. We're dealing with impacts to your property and things that you're accustomed to. You're very curious about how the process is gonna go and what actually is being done. It also serves as a very vital part of the success of this project as a whole. So the city's goal, our goal is very simple. We want to be fair and reasonable. We want to give you a fair and reasonable process that's consistent for all of the property owners. So this is a simplified bullet list of the process itself, and we'll go through each of these items in the slides as we move through this presentation. So I want to be very clear, though, this will not be the only time that you have an opportunity to view this information. I mean, this itself will be uploaded to the C's website, but there will also be other coordination efforts throughout the life of this that you will get this information, be able to read over this information and digest it. This is simply here tonight to give you an overview and to give you some expectation of this process as a whole. So, the first thing that we did was we started this process is plans and title, and we brought a title attorney on to do simply just to figure out who owns which property so we can have a good handle on who to coordinate with and in each property and property owner. Also prepared our right-of-way exhibits. These right-of-way exhibits detail the existing right-of-way, the proposed right-of-way, the easements that need to be acquired. And these documents will be used throughout the life of the project by our whole right-of-way team, and something you'll be able to view. Next in the process is staking and marking. They'll use these right-of-way exhibits that are created and go out and put stakes in your yard along this property, along the project. Areas that can't be staked will be spray painted. These are pretty important to the process itself. So we'd like to ask everybody, please don't pull the stakes. Don't knock them over. They're not just for the appraisals, the appraisers that come out and view the impacts and make their evaluation. and estimations, but they're for you as well. They give you a visual guide to the impacts of the project. So appraisals. Randy and Adam, independently from the rest of our team, they're going to prepare written documentation. And this written documentation will describe your property. It'll describe the date of which they did their analysis, the proposed impacts, and with that, they'll estimate a value for each property. Next in this process, Ted will come in addition to there being an appraisal on your property, there's a review appraisal. This simply is a secondary check that independently verifies the factual information of each of the properties, and it also gives, it also reviews the written report that the appraisers prepare. The review appraiser doesn't develop an opinion of value for the subject property, but they do conclude whether the value estimated by the appraiser is reasonable, creditable, and acceptable for making an offer. So this value is based on fair market value. In the estimate for each of these, in the estimate for each of your appraisers, the value that's shown from the appraiser will be fair. Sorry, excuse me. In the estimate of each value for each the acquisition, the appraiser will provide an estimate of fair market value. Simply put, this is the value of the property in its current condition based on comparable sales within your area. And as I stated, this process is done independently of the rest of the project team based on current market data. In addition, the appraisal will estimate the property value of the property after the proposed acquisition. The difference between these two values becomes your just compensation for the property. This value is what is used when we present the written offer. So the written offer is a document that contains a detailed list of all the components that make up the just compensation. That means the right-of-way boundaries, the easement area, and descriptions. These will all be listed with a value for each of those. Also detailed will be any other considerations or impacts that are associated with this proposed acquisition for each of the properties, along with the value. Now, in this process with the written offer, the negotiator will meet with each of the property owners to discuss the documentation and the items listed. And it's important to note that if any of the portion of this document is found to be incorrect, or if there's something you feel has been overlooked, the team will investigate this and revise the document accordingly. Finally, once an agreement has been met, payment will be made. This normally will occur within 60 days of the agreement being finalized. So eminent domain, I want to be very clear here in terms of eminent domain. This is considered a last resort. When all other options have been exhausted and an agreement cannot be made on the value of the property, then there's potential for it to go into eminent domain. But like I said, the city and our team see this as a very last resort. And if this becomes the case, the owner is entitled to a hearing to state their case. While these proceedings are taking place, the amount of the property, the value of the property that had been determined in the written offer will be deposited into an account that is accessible for each owner. That amount may be withdrawn during this time period without any penalty. It is important to note that if the amount withdrawn differs from the final judgment from the court, and this is for either party, adjustments are made once the court's decision is rendered. So that's it. Like I said, very general overview of the process. Kind of just wanted to give you a step-by-step detail some of what to expect there, to give you an opportunity to have some expectation and hopefully generate some questions. Like I said, this will not be the last time that you see this information It's not meant for you to take it all in tonight, but we do want to just give you a touch point here and a general overview. So next, we're going to move into the right-of-way layout portion. And I don't know, hopefully several of you have been to these meetings before. I think this is our fourth one. And some of this won't be new information or new exhibits, but just in case, they kind of help you visualize what the road will look like. I mean, as you know now, it's a 2-lane roadway. In the future, there's going to be 4 through lanes at 11 feet, a 14-foot center turn lane with a raised median in certain locations. Along the west side of the road, there will be a 4-foot grass strip with a 10-foot multi-use path. And on the east side of the road, there will be a 3-foot grass strip with a 5-foot sidewalk. There's some notes here on the bottom of some of the features that we have introduced into the project. One of the main components that we've talked through on each of these meetings is that one of our main design goals is to limit impacts the best that we could. We want to provide you with a safe roadway. We want to limit the impacts to everyone's properties. So this is an overview map of the northern segment, which starts just north of Wade's Crossing. You can see on the very left of the screen the Wade's Grove subdivision. It starts a couple hundred feet south of the property line of that subdivision, and it goes all the way to the Buckner Road intersection. And these are the exhibits that will be available this week for you all to download. The purpose here is kind of want to go over them with you, give you some information on them, how to read them. I know you're going to have questions about these. My contact information will be available at the very end of here. You can write it down. You can download this presentation, send me an email, ask me your question. We'll get to the right-of-way team or to the city, and we'll make sure that we can address any of the issues or concerns or questions that you have. A couple of things to note, the bottom left is the legend. So, we'll kind of detail what each of those things mean. But as you can see, what we've done is from some of the older exhibits, we pulled in the aerial. We pulled in an aerial. We pulled in some of the existing features from the surveyor. We've got those kind of in the background. We want to kind of give you an idea of, a better visual of where these impacts fall in your yard. Landmarks that you can use to kind of gauge what the impacts look like and give you as best of an idea as we can on a 2D piece of paper. The purple lines that you see, those are parcel lines that show the boundary of each parcel. There is the purple line that run along each side of the road, which is the existing right-of-way. You can see in red shaded back, that represents the area of proposed right-of-way that will be needed for this project. Outside of that is a green shade, which is the slope easement. And that represents the width and area needed to tie down the proposed cross slopes, the proposed side slopes of the road from the back of the shared use path or the sidewalk to tie it back to existing ground. And then outside of that is a blue shade, which is a construction easement. The construction easement is simply just a 10-foot area that is outside of the slope limits, which the slope limits would be where the ground ties back to existing. That just gives the contractor some room to maneuver while they're on site. And then finally, in the diagonal hatch pattern in red is a drainage easement or a utility easement. Those are permanent easements which allow, and normally they're for structures, utility or drainage outside of the proposed right-of-way. And that gives the city a little room to go in and maintain or repair these structures in any way in the future. So this first slide here, this is the very beginning of the project. Like I said, we're just north of Wade's Crossing, and you can see the northern boundary line of the Wade's Grove subdivision here. And this is where the project ties back into existing. So you can see we're going from the 5-lane section here back to existing. And we'll kind of go over different portions of this as we go through the each exhibit. So we'll kind of move on. We're at the Church of the Nativity now on the west side of the top of the page, west side. You can see for each of these exhibits, each parcel number or tract number is listed along with the property owner name. And this slide, for instance, we're showing, so we're at Glessner, Spring Station, Stuart Campbell. We're showing one of the southern box culvert here where you can see a large permanent drainage utility easement, and that's for both. Some of that is for the box culvert itself, and some of it's for the proposed sanitary sewer that will be relocated in this area. I know these are not the best of view in this format. Once again, we have to do this virtual, but I'm happy that we have the technology to at least sit down and have this conversation. These will be downloadable, and the resolution is good enough where you'll be able to zoom in and really view each of these properties. So we move down the road, we're at Twin Lakes. A few things to note here. You can see on the bottom of the page here, the east side of the roadway, there's lines with arrows. Those are showing where ditches are. You can see this kind of push the slope limits out. This is to capture the overland flow that's in this area. You'll also be able to see in some of these slides as we move forward, I didn't touch on the drainage. Inside the road, the dark black boxes represent catch basins. Catch the roadway drainage. You'll see on tract 80 that kind of just give you an idea. I flagged that one because it's easiest to see. Shows the size of the pipe. At the end of that, it's a head wall. You can see that also to the east of track 80 on 73. It looks there's another head wall there. So when you see those long rectangular shapes outside of the right of way, that generally denotes the head wall, which are used to either outfall conveyance from the road or to capture drainage from a ditch. Another thing, to point out, like I said, we did a lot of the existing features and showed those. You can see trees. Those are very good landmarks to kind of judge the impacts within each yard. Actually, I'm going to go back to this slide because one other point that I wanted to make as you view this. So when you get into home, you'll be able to see on the green shading, which are the slope limits, they'll still have two labels associated with it. One will be top of cut. The top of cut means the proposed ground of the roadway is lower than the existing ground, which means that we're going to have to cut the existing ground down. And that's represented by a label that says top of cut, and it's shown by a solid line. You also see toe of fill, which means that the proposed ground is higher than the existing ground, and we're going to need to add height here to the existing ground, and that's shown by a dashed line. You'll be able to see that more clearly at home, but it also kind of give you a feel for some of these impacts and if it's going to be adding dirt or taking dirt away. And then finally, we're at Buckner Road. You can see the roadway widens quite a bit. This is a very large intersection. All the development in Spring Hill in this area. I mean, as you know, capacity is a very important thing, and this intersection is built out for not only what we expect now, but what we expect in the future. So hopefully this can be a one-touch project. You see there's some channel eyes there in the center of the road to add a left turn lane in the future, and also some on the bottom side of the road there for additional right turn lanes. So, once again, trying to plan for the future, trying to limit impacts, and hopefully make this project as smooth as we can for you all. Next is just a kind of a tentative overall schedule. And like I said, if you've been to any of these meetings in the past, you've seen this slide, and slowly we're starting to gray out certain things. So November 2020, to begin that right-of-way acquisition phase, which has been done. You can also see this details both northern and the southern section. So beginning in December 2020 is the beginning of design package number 2. But I mean, the main point here, because we're not here to talk about the other segments, is what are you dealing with right now? And the right-of-way acquisition phase began in November. We're hoping to have that completed by the end of 2021. The acquisition phase itself, which will put us on schedule for a March 2022 begin construction date for this northern segment. If we were to look at this at more of a micro level, not the big overall project chart, this is a schedule that I guess to expect coming up. So as I said, the title report research, some of the front end property market research is all been underway throughout the month of November. We're hosting our property owner meeting here on December the 8th. You can be expecting some property owner coordination moving forward, a little bit more information about this project, some information about your property. We're planning to start rolling some of that out in December. And then you'll start seeing some right-of-way and easement stakes, as we talked about, beginning in January. And once those are out in the field, you can expect some coordination with the appraisers, which will begin in February. And then the negotiations themselves be kind of a rolling system. As appraisals are finalized and approved, then negotiations will begin for each of those tracks. And finally, once again, I want to remind you of the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. So please use that, because we are nearing the end and it will be time for some questions. One thing I want to make sure everyone knows, if this is your first meeting or if you haven't been following this project closely, here is the project website. It has all of the information from the previous public meetings. It will have these exhibits. It will have this presentation. There's a bunch of information about this project and the things that we've shown in the past. So please go and check it out. May clear up some things for you, may just give you some more things to look at, but there's a ton of information there. And then, as I said, Lee Schumann, here's my email and here's my number. We don't expect you to be able to download all of this and figure it all out in this meeting tonight, but we are giving you a route here. Download this information when it comes up on the city's website. Give me a call, send me an email. We'll start answering your questions. We want to do the best we can for you on this process and make it as easy as we can. And so finally, question, Q&A portion of this meeting. Hopefully we've got a couple.
Yes, Lee, we have a couple of questions that have started to come in. Hopefully we'll get some more, but let's go ahead and jump in. So our first question asks about the trees that will be removed due to the right-of-way taking it, and then they want to know if those trees will be replanted.
This is Chuck Downham. Very good question. My understanding of the acquisition process is that if there's a tree that has to be removed as a result of the widening project, that typically the property owner is compensated for that, and then any replacement would be the responsibility of the property owner based on the compensation that they received. But I'll certainly defer to others on our panel that they may want to provide some additional clarity to that. Lee, who would be the best to pick from?
Maybe Randy or Deborah have a thought on that. Feel free, right-of-way team, come off camera, show your face, and maybe make it a little bit easier since we can't all be in the same spot.
I think generally the idea is to try and compensate people for loss of trees or anything like that, because typically we're not able to put them back, especially where they were located, because they'll be in slopes and other areas that we need to keep clear for roadway safety.
Yes, in our evaluations, we will look at all trees and all the landscaping improvements and allow for compensation if they're inside the acquisition area or inside the easements. As far as replanting, if they're in the acquisition area, there may be limitations on replanting. If they're inside the temporary construction easement, then there's a possibility that the replanting can occur.
Okay. So we have a couple of other questions that have come in. The second one is more of a request. Someone wants to see the third map from the north. Again, there's a little bit of a glitch in their connectivity and they missed that. So if we could go back and show that real quick.
Maybe.
While Lee's scrolling back through the presentation again, for those that are listening in, this presentation along with the map graphics will all be available on the city's website, and you'll be able to download and look at those in a lot more detail following tonight's meeting. So be looking for that on the city website. There's a link at the end of our presentation for those that may not have seen that previously.
Are they asking third map from the north, like from Buckner Road? Or from the beginning? Do we know, Kevin?
They said from the north, so I would say it's from the beginning because you started north to south, if I'm not, or did you start?
We went south to north.
Okay, so it would have been third to last.
All right, so there one. So
And to the person that asked that question, if we didn't quite hit the mark on it, just enter in the chat and we'll connect with you afterwards and make sure we get you that map.
and they'll also be available for download this week. So we'll have those online, but you can get them and view them at the house.
Okay. So another question has to deal with noise and pollution impact. So has the city studied any noise or pollution impact on the area associated with the project?
The city has not undertaken any sort of a noise study as part of the analysis and ongoing planning effort. We understand from conversations and discussions we've had with a number of property owners along the corridor that noise obviously is a significant concern. We will certainly look for opportunities to work with property owners and HOAs where trees are being disturbed to try to look for opportunities for planting schemes and other things to not only soften the visual impact, but also to hopefully in the long term, as those trees mature, to also enhance noise abatement that might be a result of the traffic that's going to be traveling along the road. We've had some inquiries regarding the construction of noise barrier walls, and obviously this project would not justify such an expenditure. But as we get into some of the more densely populated areas further south, we're going to have to be very sensitive because of proximity to some of the homes along the corridor, to be sensitive to not only the proximity of the road, but also alteration of the landscapes and tree buffers and other things that have served well in the past for buffering the presence of that road against the residents. So again, as we continue to move forward, we'll certainly approach our design and the sensitivity of that with noise with property owners wherever we can practically.
Chuck, there was a follow-up question, but you answered it. It had to do with trees. Would there be trees or anything else to kind of minimize? And you already answered that. So you're thinking one step ahead. And then also we heard back. So you did get it right, Lee, in terms of the right-of-way map. So good job. And then next one's not really a question, a comment. Great job keeping us informed and sharing great information in a complete and efficient manner. So good job, everyone.
Thank you.
We do have one more question that has to deal with lighting. And so this person wants to know what type of lighting you'll be using for this project.
Right now, we are considering as part of the electrical service relocation, we're working closely with Middle Tennessee Electric on the installation of a LED style fixture. Provides a little cleaner, more pure light in terms of the lumen output and so on. But this particular light fixture has been used very successfully for these types of roads in the past. We are going to have to relocate some of the electrical along the Buckner Lane corridor. So our intention is to take advantage of the pole placement, which is at a cadence of about 200, 250 feet or so between each of the poles to install a light fixture along that. So these will be style with a very short mast arm on it. That will shed light basically not only on the road, but also on the pedestrian access ways on either side of the road as well. So hopefully that addresses that question. If you need more specific information about lighting, as the design process progresses, we can certainly share that in more detail.
Great, thanks, Chuck. have a couple more questions that have come in. This next question asks, so the median that is part of the project, is that going to be planted? And if so, would it, what types of trees or seasonal color would that involve?
Medians right now are proposed to be predominantly grass. There may be some opportunities for us to look at some planting schemes. Because of the narrowness of the islands, we may want to forego the planting of trees. Obviously, they become a pruning issue with proximity as they mature out against road right-of-ways. Often, large trucks and everything else, they create that little notch that suddenly becomes a little bit of an eyesore. But there may be some other types of planting schemes that include a variety of more ornamental type tree cover, as well as some seasonal colors that we might be able to put in. We'll also be working with HOAs and others that may want to take some responsibility for some of those to enhance their entryways. But we're going to do what we can to try to balance the corridor with plantings wherever it makes sense to try to do those. Another thing that we obviously have to be very sensitive to is that a lot of the median openings correspond with intersection openings. And we need to be very, very careful that if we put planting schemes in and they start to mature, they could suddenly obstruct visibility. And so site visibility and driver safety are going to be something very critical that we're going to have to keep in mind as well on any planting schemes that we consider along the corridor.
That's great. We do have another question that has come in. It's asking about sewer service. So with this project, will there be sewer service provided or access provided to those that don't currently have it today?
Right now, there are no plans to extend sewer along the corridor. We have a couple of limited sewer crossings, basically to reposition existing sewer systems, but the scope of the project does not include the extension of sewer along the corridor at this time. We know from some conversation that we've had with the developer of the Alexander Farm that they are intending to extend sewer northward from a current sewer gravity main that's in existence along the Buckner Lane corridor. But again, that's going to be taking a cross-country route off of Buckner Lane up into the heart of their project. So I don't expect that that's going to benefit many folks, if any, with the future extension that they intend to serve their property. But as noted, the city does not intend to extend sewer at this time along the corridor.
Okay. We've got a few more questions trickling in, but while those are coming in, we have a question for everyone out there in the audience. So we want to know if you've attended a Buckner Lane project meeting previously, or if this is your first meeting. So it's about to go live. All right, well, looks like about half of you voted. If anyone else wants to vote, we're about to close it. But it looks like for those of you that, we have one more response. Okay, so it looks like some of you have attended both meetings. One of you attended the last meeting that we had in October, and then a couple of you, this is your first meeting. So we have a little bit of everything there. Great, great. So we do have a few more questions that have come in. One asks about stoplights, so traffic lights. Will this project introduce traffic lights on Buckner Lane?
We are proposing to put in traffic signals at at various locations, specifically Stuart Campbell, Spring Station, and Twin Lakes within this particular segment of the project. We'll also be planning a major signalized intersection at the Buckner intersection, and as well as some intersection signal improvements at Buckner Lane and Duplex as part of this project as well. The realignment of the Buckner Lane project north of the Buckner intersection up to Thompson Station Road, they're also calling for a new signalized intersection at Buckner Lane and Thompson Station Road as well. That will be part of the project. There may be others as traffic warrants in the future, but those are the primary ones that the project's contemplating. Lee, anything else you want to add to that?
I don't think you caught all of them. There will obviously be one as part of the south segment as well. But
Great. Okay, so we have another question. This one has to deal with homeowner fences. So once the project is complete, how close to the right-of-way will homeowners be allowed to put up new fences?
That's an excellent question, and one that I may have to follow back with the property owner that's requesting this particular question. But it's my understanding that the city of Spring Hill has certain standards regarding the installation of fencing in front yards. And so any fence installation would need to conform with those standards. The department that typically deals with fence permits is the building department. There's a gentleman named Chris Brooks who oversees that department, and it might be a good question to ask him. But typically, the fence permit has to comply with all of the applicable fence requirements that are contained in the city's Unified Development Code. And so I would probably defer to that particular document to understand more about what's permitted within front properties and what that means for a residence along that particular road corridor. It won't be driven or dictated by the widening project. It will be driven largely by the standards by which a property owner would have to adhere in the installation of a fence within their front property. Same would apply for side or rear properties if there's a property that side faces or backs up to this particular road corridor as well. Hope that addresses the question.
I think so, and they can post a follow-up if not, but I think you answered it really well. We do have one more question for you all, and we're just curious who all is in the room today with us, if you're one of the affected landowners or a resident or someone else. So we have just one more polling question for you. And if you could just take a minute or two to answer that, that would be very helpful. Sorry, the poll is now live. Sorry about that.
while everybody's doing that, I'd like to ask if you are a impacted property owner along the corridor, please, make sure and send me an email. We'd love to have your email so it's easier to get a hold of you and make sure that we are getting the proper information to your home and in your hands. So if you get a chance, once you download this, just shoot me a quick email with your name, and I'd love to have your email so for easier correspondence.
Great. So it looks like most of the folks here tonight are one of the affected landowners, either in Group A or Group B. And then we have a resident and then just a concerned citizen. So thanks everyone for joining us. We do have one, it's sort of a follow-up question. I think it refers back to the question about sewer service, and they're asking if someone's within the Spring Hill city limits, will they not, will they be able to get sewer service? It's sort of, I guess, a clarification question.
Well, I may refer to Victor Lay, our city administrator, as well in terms of some of the overarching policies, but as was indicated in the response to the previous question, the city is not undertaking any sort of extension of sewer systems along the road corridor as part of the road widening project. We have a couple of different sewer crossings at locations where we're having to either reposition or deepen or do other types of construction work on those crossings to make sure that they can accommodate some of the other features of the widening project. If a property owner typically wants to have sewer, it's the responsibility often of the property owner to extend sewer to serve their particular parcel. That happens quite frequently when we have developing properties where a developer would come in as part of their infrastructure expansion work. They would connect to a sewer system wherever that's located and bring it to the property. So not unlike that, typically property owners would be required to do that. The good thing with sewer not being available is that there's not a mandate that you have to run sewer to your property. And unless there's environmental considerations and other things that would warrant the city giving some consideration or working with property owners to extend sewer, typically the septic systems that are in place now for those that are on large tracts would continue to be the means by which you would dispose of sewage waste on the property rather than the city extending a sewer system to your property. Victor, you may want to elaborate a little bit more on what current practice and policy for the city is.
I don't know that I can elaborate anymore. You did a really good job at answering that question. I think if there's a particular property that the owner has a question about, just reach out to us at City Hall and we can take a look at that individually and give you as clear an answer as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're all caught up. Oh no, I'm sorry. We do have one more question, and it has to do with where do we get the email address to send contact information? So if they're interested in staying involved, how can they do that?
Well, you can see it on your screen here. It'll be part of this presentation if you want to download it after the meeting or once it's posted online, but also it should be up on your screen now.
And that's the Lee Schuman at Kinley Horn address. Is that right? Okay. Okay, we are now all caught up. There are no more questions.
Well, as we stated, I mean, this is a lot to take in one meeting. Unfortunately, we can't all be together, but we do have lots of technology we can use. So please email, phone call, reach out to us. Like we said, we want this to be a fair, reasonable, consistent process for all. And I can speak for the team in the city here. We're willing to put the effort in to make sure that happens. So please give us your information, work with us, and we'll do the best we can to answer your questions and concerns.
Well, I guess, Kevin, not seeing any more questions from our audience. It's okay with everybody. I guess we'll move forward with wrapping up. If anybody has any final questions, I guess we'll ask for the final bell at this point on our attendees to see if anybody else has any questions. If not, we'll move forward with adjourning this meeting, and then we'll be in a brief recess and we'll start our 7 o'clock meeting involving Group B. And those that are attending the meeting tonight, sit in on that presentation. You're more than welcome to. It looks like we had a good mix of both Group A and Group B attendees tonight. So feel free to hang out during the 7 p.m. meeting if you have a question and would like to wait through the presentation and pose your question. We'll certainly be prepared to address those at the end of that segment as well. Kevin, I'm not seeing any other questions at this point. So on behalf of the city of Spring Hill, and I'll let Victor wrap up his comments as well, I want to take a second to thank everybody who was in attendance tonight, especially folks that are dialing in for the first time during our public meeting process. We're very committed to making sure that this is an engaging and informative process. We want property owners and affected citizens to feel free and comfortable asking questions, challenging our design process to make sure we're giving you all the best possible road corridor to serve the transportation needs, but also to make sure that it fits well within the fabric of the community that we're attempting to serve. We appreciate everybody coming out tonight to be part of the presentation. We've got a really solid right-of-way acquisition and easement acquisition team that will be in contact with you. And we look forward to hopefully making our way through that process as we work toward getting ready to move this project forward under construction in about a year. So we look forward to working with everybody in that regard. Victor, any final comments?
Just to say that the 7 o'clock meeting is a duplicate of this one. The same information will be provided. So if you want to sit through it, as Chuck mentioned, please feel free to do so. Thank you for coming tonight and watching and participating. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Just really want to reiterate that we want to try to keep you all as informed as we possibly can on this project. It's an exciting project, and we want to make sure that everybody knows where we are timing wise as we go through it. Thanks for coming. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Lee, Kevin, for being a steward of our process, and thank you very much, sub-consultants, for being a part of the presentation tonight as well. We'll see you all again at 7 o'clock. Thank you.